love my chopper and I think it love me.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's talk about the new 52. I have a question here about the new 52, but you know what's fascinating is people have kind of short memories, increasingly short memories, and if you think about the new 52, a line wide initiative that's not that old. I mean, that was not that long ago, and the new 52 at DC. First off, there was commentary I think before the new 52 that things were a little stale and DC was needing a good shakeup, and Marvel was really finding its footing and making some good headway. And the new 52 came along, and it was that let's just go for it. Tons of different ideas. It tends to, as time wears on, it tends to be loved or hated in a similar way the 90s are loved and hated, kind of binary. But what people forget is that there was this period when the new 52 was out where it killed the sales. It dominated Marvel for a solid year. And Marvel was very much the number two company. And there were lots of articles being written on, is this the end of Marvel Comics, and so on. And so I point this out before we get into all this because people like to say that, comics are done. Close it up. It's never coming back. It's never, ever, ever, thank you, Chris Jericho, coming back. But again, history has shown us over and over and over that things come back from the brink all the time. And sometimes those things that bring it back from the brink are good. Like I did like Rebirth, a lot of its initial kind of ideas. And sometimes those things are, very, very questionable. Like the new 52. There were some good titles in there. I did like Animal Man. I liked Swamp Thing. I liked a few of the other things they did there. I liked the Wonder Woman series a lot. That again is my favorite Wonder Woman series, dating all the way back to Loeb's. But anyway, I think by and large, I wasn't the biggest fan of the new 52, but I can't argue that it was very successful in what it did. So let's get to this mail, which asks some questions about that. It says, hey there, hi there. I hope that you and your family are doing well. If you get this email during your global travels, I hope your flights have been uneventful. I'll tell you, going to Poland's not fun right now. It was not fun knowing I was heading to Poland when the news dropped. I was in the plane, and the news drops. It's like, hey, Russia may have just bombed Poland. Now, that turned out not to be true, but that was not the best feeling heading in that direction during that news drop. Anyway, also there's some confusion, by the way. I mentioned in a video that my wife and I are going to renew our vows in Japan. That was not the trip I was just on. We are going to, meaning in the next year. I thought I said that in the next year. So we haven't done that yet, but thank you everybody for the well wishes. I'll have to post a photo or two of that. That'll be fun. Anyway, your video about working for the big two got me thinking about the new 52. There were a lot of creators initially involved with the new 52, and then those creators dwindled down to the point where the new 52 crashed and burned. A lot of folks were putting blame on the creators, such as Rob Liefeld and George Perez. You heard creators like Dan Jurgens kind of defending these creators, but they didn't say much. Yeah, the one big reason why they didn't say much is because definitely the vibe then, as now, was that if you question people that were in the midst of tarring and feathering, you're not going to get work or come out you. And particularly for creators like Jurgens, who's older, he knows that, he's one small step away from the publishers declaring, like Simonson and others, like, nobody likes you anymore. And then you're done. In many ways, I know that people talk about what the milkshake brew and kind of these various things that happened in 2014, 2015, 2016, in that kind of range, as being kind of this gatekeeping, the dawn of intercompany gatekeeping. But there's a good story to be had, maybe it's another video, of some of the things that went on during the new 52, the way Rob Liefeld was treated, the way George Perez was treated, was kind of the precursor. It was the same exact behavior. It just happened earlier and people didn't notice it. Not sure why. Maybe social media wasn't far enough along that you couldn't see this stuff. Maybe the whole Trump factor kind of brought a lot of it to the light. I'm not sure, but a lot of the same behavior happened earlier during that period, and there's a lot of internal politics and bullshit that went on there. And Rob Liefeld, I think, A, he can take care of himself. B, he kind of asks, I don't want to say ask for it, but I mean, he invites controversy at times. I think some of the stuff that went on with him was absolutely unfair and wrong. But, he wasn't a kind of innocent victim just standing there and people decided to take a swipe at him. George Perez, on the other hand, screw those people. I mean, George Perez is, again, one of the nicest guys. I mean, there you have to dig to find a George Perez was irritated story. Just not angry, just mildly irritated. And some of the shit that went down there, particularly in light of Grant Morrison, what was going on with Superman at the time, kind of Perez's complaints like, "Hey, nobody is orchestrating shit." I don't know. There's a couple things in comics that I think deserve a good reckoning, and the people who went after George Perez inside of DC, which includes creators and some of the staff, that was a bunch of bullshit. And absolutely that was mean girl, mean boy bullshit that went on with him, because Perez said something entirely reasonable, like, "Hey, I think that it'd be nice if editorial could coordinate some of this stuff because." You know, uh, it's like I'm doing something, Morrison's doing something. You clearly have picked the Morrison pony to ride here rather than what I'm doing. It'd be really nice if we could, have some kind of cohesion. Like, he was polite about it. I think the harshest he got was like, working in some of these conditions is a nightmare. That was mean Perez. And again, people went after him just aggressively. What's funny is some of the people that went after him were at the same time aggressively defending old Eddie, who was a clear a clear danger in different ways to comics. Anyway, back to the mail. The two folks who should know the entire story of why the New 52 failed, including creators jumping ship, should be Dan Didio and Jim Lee. I'm not sure Jim Lee was as involved as we think during that period, but I know he was. Dan Didio for sure. What caused the New 52 to fail? Well, partially Dan Didio and others. Let's immediately put aside the complaints that the new continuity was never done and that some characters were just put into limbo. How well did the New 52 editors manage their jobs? Some well, some terrible, I think is the answer there. I think they're, I am definitely sympathetic to the fact that editorial frequently has more to do than staff, and that's a problem. But you could see some of the seeds being sown during the New 52 when editorial were, let's just say some of them, not all of them, few of them, were absolutely not doing their jobs well and creating a lot of chaos, a lot of drama. Some of those people were then laid off, went to work for other companies, and it kind of built the world we have today, I believe. Anyway, I'm sure some people will disagree, but definitely there was some bullshit during that time period. Were there not enough editors? There were actually quite a bit during the New 52. Why were so many new, inexperienced editors hired who didn't have the mentoring to handle their jobs? They grew. In many cases, some friends were brought in, and there you have it. It seems that growing disappointment and then failure of the New 52 is all because of how the New 52 was managed. It seems that mismanagement, or perhaps the lack of editorial staff, is repeating itself at DC Comics. Rebirth seems to have started well, but then spiraled down the same path as New 52. Future State and Infinite Frontier seem to have been managed even worse. The sign of DC Comics handling their management and having competent editorial staff in 2023 doesn't seem all that bright. If you decide to do a video on this, I would love to hear what really caused the New 52 to fail. That's a bigger video, and I will do that video, but kind of in a nutshell, what caused it to fail were a lot of infighting, for sure. There was a kind of a very aggressive, which I think, for better or worse, Didio, I think, was in the center of a lot of that. I think Bob Harris certainly didn't help through that period, and a handful of others that were there. But there was a lot of infighting, and there was a lot of pettiness, and there was, as I mentioned, there was a lot of repositioning, and people were trying to gain territory. It was a world of political upheaval during the New 52, and I think there were a lot of people who gained kind of very rapid ego with the New 52 success. That first year was hugely successful. They did big numbers, and it caused a lot of people to learn the wrong lessons. There were some good editors who were kind of shuffled out during that period. There were some editors who brought in their buddies and friends who, as you mentioned, were completely inexperienced and not capable of doing the job. it changed the power structure within the company where creators were, had less of a seat at the table. In that way, I think it became a little bit more like Marvel historically, where at Marvel, the internal full time staff editorial kind of kept a big wall between them and the creators, and DC I think became much the same, with the exception of a very small handful of creators that were kind of invited into the secret club, and those creators either lorded over that position or seemed somewhat oblivious to it. But there were a lot of politics, absolutely a ton of politics during that time, and I think that they didn't have the infrastructure or the leadership to get them through a lot of those politics. Is a lot of what happened for the New 52. But that's a good video in and of itself. I don't think the current situation is that similar to New 52. So first of all, the editorial staff is sixth, maybe an eighth of what it was. It's extremely short staff now. The DC era for the last several years, I think from, I don't know, a couple years after Rebirth on, certainly through Infinite Frontier and Future State, the DC world is a world of, are we going to get sold? Are we going to go to a different owner? What are we going to do? Should we believe Bleeding Cool are going to shut down? Should we believe the YouTubers to say we're going to shut down? I don't know. Should we even work at all? Oh, here's COVID. Well, screw it. The world sucks. It's been a era. The last 4 years have been an era of waiting to see what's going to happen. And this is typical in companies, but what you hope is that leadership will emerge where somebody will step out into the spotlight and go, hey guys, we can't just wait for something to happen. We have to make something happen. We need to actually, it's our time to pick up the baton and try and do something big. That's the world. Let's do it. We can be paralyzed by uncertainty, or we can actually try and accomplish something. Let's see what we can do. That's what DC needs. It needs very badly that person. Who is that person? Don't know, but we absolutely need it. It is a world where leadership is desperately needed. The challenge is you still have some people at the top of DC who will kind of, they're not doing much, but they're going to sniff out that leadership and want to hold it back. I think the moment though is right now. There's about a 3-month window where I think some ambitious people can come in there, and hopefully they're lawful good and not chaotic evil with their ambition. And they come in and say, guys, I don't want to grab all the glory, but I do want to have a good comic company. So who's with me? Let's go. And just start moving. I think that is desperately needed. So if one of you, there's 2 names that spring to mind who do listen to this show on occasion. If one of you is listening to this right now, let's do it. How can I help you? I am happy to help you personally. I'm happy to help you. Let's go. Pick up the baton, be the leader, lead us into the promised land. I think the danger to DC, as a danger to Marvel and many other places, is complacency. It's, well, somebody else will come along. I'll wait for that other person to come along and do that. Be the person. Even if it's a horrible disaster, typically speaking, people who try are always more successful than people who never try. Let's see what happens. Anyway, a good video about the New 52 from my perspective. I'd love to hear some people from inside the company during that time as well, what they think. But that's my perspective on it. That's how it felt from the outside, talking to editors and creators at the time, being a retailer during that time. That's what it felt. There was just the increase in comments about politics were off the charts during that period, with fingers being pointed at a couple, almost always the same subjects. And Didio definitely being regularly one of them. But anyway, thanks very much for the mail. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and thanks for listening.